Dragon's Dogma 2 is coming. But like, what's up with all the hype? So let's talk about it. Let's take a step back and observe the games industry and why this title in particular is garnering all this hype and support. And I think it's largely because the stars are aligning in such a way. You have a lot of people kind of drained out on the whole AAA gaming market, with a lot of game design feeling overtly handholdy and just derivative and uninspired in a lot of ways and circumstances. But you also have these titles that release every now and then, and in the last few years, rather frequently, with Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Helldivers 2, and Palworld. An eclectic list to be sure, but what all these games focus on is player agency, and focusing in on that idea and that concept and allowing these experiences to be shaped and to shift alongside, well, the player's will in certain ways and in different ways to one another. And Dragon's Dogma 2 appears to be continuing this trend. Well, what is player agency? Let's talk about it. Player agency is the idea and the concept that the player has direct and palpable influence on the overall state of the world, the story, or its gameplay mechanics. Every game has player agency to some degree, but some more so than others, and games like Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Helldivers 2, and Palworld lean into the aspect of player agency to deliver a unique experience that is largely refreshing in the modern day. Baldur's Gate 3 relies on player agency to determine the story events, branching dialogue trees, and how creatively you can use the sandbox to your advantage to shape and alter the story to your preferences and to, well, what you want it to be. Elden Ring has a massive sandbox of skills and abilities and weapons and armor sets, oh my, in a giant open world where the game just lets go of the reins, gives you a rough guiding idea as to where to go for the main story, but it drops you in this open world and just says go. Doesn't rely on having a checklist of things to do. You explore the world naturally, you discover quests naturally, and you can choose to progress them at your own leisure if you so want to. It's a rather simple idea, but it's executed extremely well. What about Helldivers 2? Well, it's a bit community-focused, isn't it? And you as the player can choose, well, which war effort do you want to contribute to and want to progress? Palworld is a blend between the styles of Breath of the Wild and Pokemon in a lot of ways, dropping you in this entire open world, letting you create a base wherever you want, collect all the pals slash Pokemon in the world that you want. So Palworld in a lot of ways is more focused on the customization side of things when it comes to player agency. Helldivers 2 is a community-driven player agency experience. Elden Ring has player agency in terms of how you tackle the open world and that overall adventure, whereas Baldur's Gate 3 focuses in on that narrative player agency and letting you shape and shift the story and the progression of it to your liking to whatever you can think of. Well, what about Dragon's Dogma 2? Each of those games really sunk their claws into the hearts and minds of millions of gamers out there. What can Dragon's Dogma 2 do? And in a lot of ways, I think the design of the player agency in Dragon's Dogma 2 more closely mirrors the design in Elden Ring than the other 3 games in this list. Because you have this open world and you have a bunch of things you can do, and sometimes seemingly simple tasks. IGN had a preview where the demonstrator even talked about, I got a quest to just go collect some rocks in a cave, and I wound up fighting some cool boss fight in there. The game didn't tell you or warn you that there was a cool boss fight in there, just told you to go collect some rocks, and then you organically discover this thing. And you can choose to combat it or run away from it. Dragon's Dogma 2, at least if it's anything like Dragon's Dogma 1 and what I've played of Dragon's Dogma 1, is very much focused on the gameplay loop and the gameplay experience of putting you in this open world and just telling you to go. It'll give you a list of quests and all of these things to do, but the combat is so customizable and fun and replayable that you don't mind stopping to smell the roses because you may come across some cool encounter that you can take over. And then when it comes to each encounter, how do you want to overcome it? How do you want to tackle this behemoth that's placed in front of you, the player? If it's a Cyclops, you can continually to attack the leg to try and knock it down and then go for the eyeball. Or, what you can also do, is climb up it, because the game lets you do this. It's not just a matter of standing in front of the boss and whack it a few times. It can devolve to that if you want it to, but it doesn't have to be. You can climb up the boss and attack certain segments of it, or even the eyeball if you really want to. But the boss is going to try and counteract that. If you're hanging off its butt cheek, it might try and booty slam the ground. If you're right in front of its eyeball, it may try and use its arm to swat you away. And you can utilize the numerous vocation slash classes that the game has on offer to tackle these encounters in different and unique ways that is personalized to you. Because not only do you have a wealth of new classes in the game, or different classes, you also have numerous skills and combinations in just a single class / vocation. And when you combine that with the pawn system, which is your NPC party, then all of a sudden you have a bunch of combinations at your disposal that you can mix and match between encounters to suit your playstyle, your preferences, and what you want out of it. For instance, in Dragon's Dogma 1, I have an NPC pawn that is focused on tanking, so I gave them a sword and a shield, and they're a fighter. I wanted to rock a giant two-handed sword, so I'm a warrior. The cool-ass Viking helmet and the like. But the magic in Dragon's Dogma is really cool and visually appealing. But maybe I wouldn't like having all those long cast times, ignore the fact I play warrior. So what did I do? I made my other two pawns sorcerers, or wizards, or whatever they're called. So I can still reap the effects of the magic, but I can have a playstyle that's more in line with my preferences. And the way these vocations intersect with one another, those mages / sorcerers augment my sword. They can give me buffs, so I can do even more damage. Or they can hold the enemies down so I can go up and whack them. NPCs may use magic dark tendrils to like hold an enemy down, or they may just go about it the old-fashioned way, go up behind the jabroni and hold them with their arms, say, "Hey, Arisen, come over here and absolutely annihilate this jabroni." I can come over with my giant sword, slice him in twain, like Moses did the Red Sea, and it's cool. Because none of these games that I'm talking about take themselves too seriously and cross the threshold of taking themselves too seriously when it harms the player agency. Because even in Dragon's Dogma 2, from the looks of it, it's the same as Dragon Dogma 1, where there's a lot of ragdoll physics, and they don't need to tune the physics of the game and the bodies and the corpses, oh my, to be hyper-realistic. Why not have it so if you hypercharge a giant overhand two-handed sword swing with your sword, why make it so you only do a little bit of damage and the enemy may get stunned a little bit? No, send that sucker to orbit, because why not? It's cool, and it's fun, and it's mechanically pleasing when you're able to pull it off. We can have fun with these experiences, and we don't have to treat them too seriously. We can have them be treated seriously, but there's a time and a place even within these games where we can just let the wings spread, if you will, and let the player do wacky cool stuff because it's fun to be able to do wacky cool stuff. Baldur's Gate 3 is a quest about changing your body and all that, and it can get really dark and macabre. But there's also a moment where you just turn into a wheel of cheese. Some of the builds in Elden Ring are absolutely nutty, and watching a boss trying to slow walk all the way to you while you blast them with magic is hilarious. I mean, look at any cutscene from Helldivers 2, Jesus, it's funny. And look at all the dialogue. They have fun with it. Do I even need to talk about Palworld? Pokemon with guns, and that's a great idea. Have fun with it. Don't limit what the player can do to a reasonable degree simply because you want the game to be too realistic or too serious. Or you feel that you can't trust the player to be able to connect the dots. Take their hands off the shoulder of the gamer and let them play and try things out. Let them struggle, let them fall, let them pick themselves back up. Let them try new things, new combinations, and just see what works. And I think that's where Dragon's Dogma 2 can really shine, especially when it concerns this non-linear open world design. Because so often do a lot of open world games just feel like a glorified to-do list. And it makes the open world not feel that open and just feel like a glorified loading screen as you go from point A to point B to check off whatever task you have to do. Sometimes less is more. Keep it simple, stupid. By giving the player vague ideas about where to go, sometimes, or vague objectives just to take them to a location so that the things in that location can organically make themselves known to the player, works. Like how in Elden Ring, if you run through a specific bush, you may find an NPC that takes you on a quest line. You don't have to find them, but if you do, it's cool, because you discovered something. And that is seemingly the design philosophy behind Dragon's Dogma 2. Because so far, that's been the design philosophy that I've experienced in Dragon's Dogma 1. And Dragon's Dogma 2, for the most part, just seems like Dragon's Dogma 1, but taken to 11, and possibly 12. And that's a great thing. You don't have to change your identity just for the sake of changing it. If you have a working formula, keep the formula. Expand on it, flesh it out, sand out the rough edges, and build up on the great ideas. What did Dragon's Dogma 1 do so well and was so renowned for years about? That class system, that gameplay loop. Just give more of that in Dragon's Dogma 2. More customization, more combinations, more things to fight, more interesting things to fight, a bigger world, stuff like that. And by relying on player agency and that inherent wanderlust that a lot of people have when you're playing an open world game to these styles, sometimes less is more, as we talked about. And when you incentivize natural discovery and encounters by showcasing to the player that even in a small sector of the level, that you can find a whole bunch of things to do organically and naturally, that incentivizes the player and puts them in a mindset to where they feel rewarded for doing so. So in the future, the chances are when they experience the rest of the game, they're more inclined to do so because you have given them reasons to be faithful to the idea that this style of design is going to carry into the future. They'll want to explore if they believe they'll find something by exploring. Whereas if you already tell me everything that's over that hill, I don't need to go over that hill because I already know what's beyond it. Or my desire to go beyond that hill is less than. It takes a little something out of that journey, of that adventure. And this is all absolutely personal preference, don't get me wrong, not everyone will feel this way. But I feel there's a massive sect of players that kind of been, I don't want to say ignored, but not catered to as much in the past. And these last few years, we've gotten game after game that is going in this direction and they're doing well. Player agency is a hell of a thing. And when you nail it correctly and you utilize it in interesting and fun, organic ways to incentivize playing and self-discovery, then it can make an experience feel not just useful, but unique and individualized, as if this journey is really your own and not just some handcrafted experience for you to experience. Nothing wrong with those, but it's nice to have a breath of fresh air every now and then. Think about like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. There's nothing wrong with the Shire, but every now and then, because you get what you get and you know what you like, but every now and then, you may want to find out what's beyond the Shire and go out on an adventure to spread your wings and experience these worlds. And that's a cool thing. Variety is the spice of life after all. And I think that's really what I, came to say today. And if Dragon's Dogma 2, when it releases, is able to really embody these design principles and these philosophies, which from the advertising and the gameplay we have been shown, it seems like it's going to, I think it can do reasonably well. I don't know how well Dragon's Dogma 2 will end up doing, but I think the ceiling is really high. We'll have to see how the game quality actually is and how reception to it ends up being. But I will say right now, I am optimistic. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, your opinions on Dragon's Dogma 2. What class or vocation do you really want to play? I'm leaning between the Mystic Spear guy or Warrior, personally. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and to hear your perspectives. And let me know what game you think did player agency in whatever way you can think of really well that resonated with you. I'd love to hear your stories and hear your perspectives. Stay safe. Have a great day. Go play some video games if you can. Leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload and stream in the future. Stay safe. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.